For women, the problem is particularly acute. Because the men have died. Tens of thousands of men have died. What? Many soldiers experience psychological stress that strains their intimate connections, sexologists say. It's also common to see women on dating apps stating their refusal to date Russian speakers. Oh, it's common to see blatant racists. Wow. Noting that both her grandparents had taken part in Ukraine's pro-independence nationalist movements in the 40s. You mean the Nazis?
Mike. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you are. But you may want to start changing your ways.
All right, chat. I want to show you the story that was probably the funniest story over the weekend. This story made me actually chuckle. This is you know, chuckling at this is really kind of mean on my part, but why was this published? This is so fun. Like, this is rage bait, right? Like, this is intentional rage bait, right? Like, what are you doing? What is this? But let's have fun. Let's read this one. War shatters dating scene for women in Ukraine. While the pursuit of love might seem secondary to dealing with the horrors and privations of the war, many Ukrainians say they need romantic relationships to help them cope. A woman smoking a hookah last month at the Forsage nightclub in Kyiv, Ukraine. Many women in Ukraine say they have a difficult time meeting men now because of the war. For the past 2.5 years, Katerina Barakna, I don't know how to say this at all. I'm sorry, chat. Barakna has wanted to meet someone special, but war always gets in the way. She met a soldier, but then he was sent to the front. She traded text messages with another man. Jodied him right off the bat. But those fizzled out because he was in no mood to meet, fearing he might soon be drafted on the dating app Bumble. She liked the looks of a hipster, but when she scrolled through his photographs, she noticed his amputated leg. I looked at his profile for 15 minutes and felt so sorry for her. A marketing director for a clothing brand. Keep at it, Queen. You're doing God's work. You are keeping Ukraine's economy. You're working hard as a marketing director for a clothing brand. This is what I like to call, chat, the most bullshit job that ever bullshitted. The most worthless job that ever worthless. Fucking useless. Anyway, sorry. She wondered if she could handle a relationship with a maimed war veteran. Then she swiped left. Unmatched. Thank you for giving your leg for Ukraine. Unmatched. By the way, this is like, honestly, I'm glad they made it. Like, first of all, you are the level of stupidity and narcissism of this woman is legitimately crazy. Like, yeah, I want to be quoted in the New York Times about how I unmatched a maimed soldier because I couldn't handle his leg. Meanwhile, I'm a marketing director for a clothing brand. And like, are you fucking crazy? Like, the narcissism of this person is like, even if this is like, and what I'm trying to say is, even if this is true, this is something that you should never say out loud to anyone. You think it in your deepest, darkest part of your heart. And you're like, listen, I don't know that I can handle this. And you do it quietly. You know, I mean, broadcasting this is batshit. You have to be utterly delusional. I mean, first of all, this is an evil thing to do. I just want to lay this out there. Prejudging someone because of an amputation they suffered in a war to supposedly protect your own ass. That's fucking crazy. Russia's full-scale invasion has upended nearly every facet of daily life in Ukraine. 2/3 of Ukrainians have lost a relative or friend to the conflict. Hours-long blackouts are now routine across the country, and entire cities have been obliterated by Russian strikes. Oh, my life is so hard. I can't even date anyone with the war and all. Here, can you see me in my fuzzy slippers, reading a book and sipping tea? My balcony. What is going, like the delusion of the, oh my god, like what? It has also wreaked havoc on the dating scene. While the pursuit of love might seem secondary to dealing with missile attacks, power outages, and food shortages, many Ukrainians say the need for romantic relationships to help them cope with the trauma of living in a nation at war. This is crazy. This is fucking crazy. This is fucking crazy. Like, I don't like to throw out mental illness terms, but this is like the most narcissistic, solipsistic, BPD ass shit I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. For women, the problem is particularly acute because the men have died. Tens of thousands of men have died. What? I guess when you're dead, you don't have to worry about dating anymore. This is the most incel bait article I've ever seen in my entire life. Many more are on the... For women, the problem is acute because all the men have died. I think that might affect your dating life if you die in a war that you were drafted to. I'm just saying, maybe. Many more are on the front line. Some have fled the country, and others are reluctant to leave their homes, fearful of being stopped in the street by draft officers. Guys, I don't know. I think, you know, as I'm sitting here sipping tea on my balcony, reading in my fuzzy slippers, I think, you know, being press ganged and kidnapped off the street to go to a front... go to the war and die is probably a little bit more of a problem for your dating life. I don't know. What is going on? In cities like Kyiv, the capital, the presence of men has noticeably dwindled. In some villages, conscription has hollowed out the male population. This leaves a small percentage of men who are ready for and want relationships, says Margarita Stelmashova, a Ukrainian psychotherapist and sexologist. Drafter. Every woman in this article should be drafted. That's my personal opinion, okay? Get some grugs in the chat. These are fake-ass fucking jobs. Draft these people. The war has made forming long-term relationships more challenging. Many soldiers experience psychological stress that strains their intimate connections, sexologists say. Women have it so tough. The women of Ukraine have it so tough. The men are so racked by PTSD from the horrors they witnessed that they can't fuck as good. What? And several women said in interviews that they're worried about dating servicemen who could have war trauma and who could one day be killed. Okay, like I legitimately, I want to say that the person that wrote this article is the most insane narcissist I've ever seen. Like, this is actually hurting to read. Like, because I'm not an insane incel, I'm not going down the incel like rabbit hole, you know what I mean? But I'm just in pain because you have to be the most out of touch, insane, batshit crazy narcissist to put these words in this order. What the fuck are you talking about? Faced with the turmoil of war, some women are now resorting to measures they had not contemplated before, like using dating apps or going on speed dates. Men are drowning trying to like flee Ukraine to avoid going into the meat grinder against the Russian military. And these women have to use dating apps. The horror! Last year, Ukraine had the lowest number of births and its second lowest number of marriages in the past 10 years, according to government data. War is a deal breaker, said Svetlana Krivochuku, 36, an IT worker who on a recent Sunday afternoon was participating for the first time in a speed dating event in a trendy cafe in central Kyiv. It's a love crisis. In the cafe, women sat at tables marked with numbered signs while men rotated for 5-minute talks. Each conversation began with people exchanging forums detailing their interests. Smiles crept across faces and laughter filled the room as bonds were forged. Oh my God, I can't believe women had to lower themselves to the speed dating event. Meanwhile, you know, men are coming back from the war maimed. Like, legitimately, this is insane. This is freak shit. In the cafe, can you imagine doing this, like going, it's a dating crisis. These women keep dying. Oh, this woman was maimed. I don't think I'm ready for that. Like, what the fuck? At the table farther back, Alyssa Samusiva, 38, the organizer of the event, called Tet 8T, struck a somber note. Only 26 men had turned up, she said, compared with the usual minimum of 30. That had forced her to hold only one speed dating session instead of the usual two. They're afraid, said of the men, attributing their absence to a mobilization law of the Ukrainian government enforced in May to fill out the ranks of the army. They don't want to go out. They just want to sit at home and hide. Miss Samusiva said she was considered organizing online sessions to circumvent the issue, like during COVID. This is the most narcissistic woman I've ever seen in my entire life. It's actually hurting. I'm not a lib, so I'm not a campist. If you don't know what a campist is, it's basically a person who claims to be a leftist, but supports their nation or their country or their alliance in a war. Okay? It comes from World War I. When there were two ways that leftists approached World War I. Real leftists were like, this is an insane war. None of this matters. It doesn't matter who wins. It's capitalists and imperialists on all sides. This is insane. We should stop the war. There's no difference between a Russian worker and an American worker. What are we doing? Why are we killing ourselves? This, why are we, or a German worker and a French worker, or an Italian worker and a worker of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire? Like, what is this? This is crazy. And then there were people like Vaush, the Vaushites of World War I, who were like, it would be good if we win. I'd rather my country be the empire than your country. Okay? That's so, and so it's relevant today because you'll see a lot of people calling themselves leftists and then going, yeah, NATO, yeah, we need to sanction China, yeah, sanction Venezuela, yeah, we need to do regime change, yeah. Those are campists. Okay, this is very basic leftist shit, because this is something you learn pretty much very early in your exploration of leftist thought, which is all workers are brothers, we're all the same, all nations are fake, nationalism led to disaster, killing hundreds of millions of people. It's crazy talk to support Western imperialism. What the fuck are you talking about? So whenever we hear somebody who's like, I'm a socialist, I'm an anarcho-Bidenist, an anarcho-NATOist, we're like, what the fuck? So all is that to say, I don't want the Ukrainians to get invaded by Russia. It's very clearly an imperialist war. I also don't think the Ukrainians should be used as NATO's little fucking spy country where they put a bunch of listening devices and platforms in eastern Ukraine so they could try to contain and spy on Russia. I think that is escalatory and unnecessary. Russia doesn't really represent a threat to world order. Like, they were happy to trade with Europe. All they didn't want was fucking Ukraine to enter NATO, which would be the same as us saying, we don't want Mexico to enter into an alliance with China. Can you imagine if Mexico signed an alliance with China and put a bunch of Chinese listening posts in Tijuana, how we would feel? Do you understand how stupid this is? How crazy it is to do it to Russia? It's fucking stupid. That being said, these people are fucking evil. Okay, let's move on. On dating apps, men's profiles offer a window into the radical changes brought about by the conflict. More men are pictured wearing military uniforms or with prosthetic limbs. Foreigners employed by humanitarian organizations and international institutions appear quite regularly. So do foreign fighters who have joined Ukraine's war against Russia. These people are fucking gross. I'm sorry. The strain of the war on Ukrainian men is evident on dating apps, observing that many look very depressed and tired. She and other women said their moon was gloomy, with few willing to commit to relationships. You don't say! Olena Aktisenko, 24, a marketing producer. Fake fucking job. Wait. Here's what I would do. If I was in a war, if we were in a war, I would pass the marketing, the Fake Jobs Liquidation Act. And I would draft every single person who has a marketing job into the military immediately. Said her exchanges on the dating app often hit a wall. I asked, what are we doing? What is happening? She said, They respond, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow in 2 years' time. There's a war in the country. Mrs. Akisenko said about 1 in 5 men she encountered on Tinder were soldiers, but she has not chatted with any of them. They're brave, they're heroes, she said. But given the situation, starting a relationship feels too risky. This is the best incel bait ever written. I want to see how many times this article is being linked on incel forums right now. This is the most pro-incel article ever written by a human being. Several Ukrainian women who have traveled abroad since the war broke out said it was much easier to date foreigners who did not face the threat of war. Mrs. Berakna, who often traveled outside Ukraine, I would censor this article. Like, I would censor this article because this article is literally just brain poison. This is one of the most evil articles ever written. Why do our men have to suffer so much when women could just go abroad and have a martini in Milan, she asked. Miss Pelchuka recalled how a military man she once dated had ended their relationship after he was injured. He said, you could find someone better than me in Kyiv, she recalled. It was very painful. This is the equivalent of, yeah, I had a really good relationship going on. And then she got cancer. And I don't want to deal with that. Anyway, so I'm single now. What? Holy Jesus Christ. The war has also heightened ideological divides, crushing potential relationships that might have blossomed before the conflict. Some women now refuse to date draft dodgers. Go to the fucking military then! What are you talking about? What? It's also common to see women on dating apps stating their refusal to date Russian speakers. Oh, it's common to see blatant racists. Wow. Reflecting a broader movement among Ukrainians since the war began to stop speaking Russian, a common language in the country, and switch entirely to Ukrainian, which is literally just Russian with an accent. The difference between German and Austria and German and fucking like Berlin is more different than it is between Ukrainian and Russian. Seriously. Swiss German and Berlin German and Hochdeutsch is more different than Ukrainian and Russian. And this is, you know, again, how are you supposed to know that? You don't speak Russian. But like, come on. This is batshit crazy, dude. At the speed dating event in Kyiv, Yulia Kovtun stayed silent for 5 minutes after the man who had just sat down at her table told her he would speak only Russian. I'm looking for someone who shares my values and firmly supports the language issue, she said. Noting that both her grandparents had taken part in Ukraine's pro-independence nationalist movements in the 40s. You mean the Nazis? The Nazi collaborator fascists? The 40s, huh? Ruh-roh. Man, this article is like, it gets better and better. The atmosphere was more relaxed at the table of Serhiy Kuchikov, a soldier who lost his left leg in the war and now wears a sleek black prosthesis. He's fucking slanging dick. He's like, listen, the worst are, I'm not going back. I lost my leg. He's like, I got a pension. I'm chilling, you know? I'm slanging dick. I'm going to every speed dating event. Well, assuming he didn't lose his dick. Yeah, there was a study that I like to cite called Injury Profile Suffered by Targets of Anti-Personnel Improvised Explosive Devices. The level of amputation, the level of soft tissue injury, the fracture pattern, including pelvic fractures, as well as perineal, gluteal, genital, and other injuries were recorded. So in other words, you know, when somebody loses their leg, they have a very high chance of, like, you know, having a severe perineal, gluteal, or genital injury, if you get my drift. Anyway, he and the woman across from him said they were glad to have found a place to meet people but briefly forget the harsh realities of war. Can you imagine unmatching someone because they have a prosthetic leg? How freaking, like, evil that is, especially in the middle of a war. And then have the New York Times publish you doing it and think you look good. Like, the level of narcissistic insanity is batshit crazy. Mr. Chukov said the event was a breath of fresh air compared with the situation in the army where he and his fellow soldiers struggled to form or cultivate romantic relationship. It's a great problem, he said, his voice trailing off. I don't need to come a second time because there's already so many nice girls today, he said with a grin. It's more than enough. No comments? Oh man, come on. Let me have a comment section. Come on. Holy shit. That is the worst article I've ever seen in my life. Legitimately incel propaganda.
She has no idea who Mike is.
Mike. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you are. But your name, wanna start changing your ways. Change new ways. We're changing your name.